Greetings, mortals, peers, and queers. I'm Lady Avalon, host of Serotonin Studios. There's new lighting, new background, new setup, but no new Speaker of the House because the GOP can't govern and don't want to. As Kevin McCarthy reaps the whirlwind, let's hope voters understand that this chaos was never really about Donald Trump. If anyone still labors under the impression that Donald Trump invented the shit show that is the modern Republican Party, Tuesday's performance on Capitol Hill will have disabused them of that notion. It was deja vu all over again, just like in 2015 when Kevin McCarthy was humiliated by the far-right bomb throwers simply because he was so easy to humiliate, thus giving them leverage and pleasure in equal measure. Poor McCarthy spent the next 7 years groveling and genuflecting to these extremists under the foolish impression that they would reward him for his fealty. Instead, they simply laughed in his face and humiliated him again. Back in 2015, the newly formed Freedom Caucus, born out of the Tea Party class that came into Congress 5 years before in the 2010 shellacking, managed to force then Speaker John Boehmer to resign after having the temerity to make deals with the Democrats in the Senate and the White House in order to keep the government functioning. They were a rump caucus that didn't have the power to stop bipartisan legislation, but they did have the leverage to force Boehmer out and to prevent the ascension of McCarthy, his anointed successor. At the time, McCarthy made it easier for them by telling the press that the congressional Benghazi hearings were set up to destroy Hillary Clinton, and he saw that the whip count... He saw that the whip count, and he knew that he didn't have the votes of all those Freedom Caucus nooks, and abruptly decided to bow out. After all, the superstar GOP dreamboat and former vice presidential nominee Paul Ryan was waiting in the wings, and McCarthy knew he couldn't compete with those baby blues. Ryan took the job for 4 years, but decided not to run for re-election in 2018, largely because those same people made his life as miserable as they made his predecessors. So this behavior that is going on in the Republican Party is nothing new. Before Trump had ever uttered the words "Make America Great Again," he didn't invent this lunacy, he just watched it unfold and saw the opportunity to use it. After all, Trump has already done a test run with his birther nonsense and liked the vibe. In effect, GOP has been headed down this anarchic path for decades. Trump undoubtedly made it worse, but he didn't create it. Right now, in fact, he seems almost irrelevant to the descent into further madness. Trump supposedly whipped votes for McCarthy, and it did no good with the diehards. It remains to be seen if he still has the loyalty of 30 to 40% of the Republicans' voters he will need to remain viable in the presidential race, but he clearly has no pull in Congress. In truth, he didn't have much when he was president. His personal attacks on the late Senator John McCain cost Republicans their most cherished policy objective, repealing the Affordable Care Act. Wild. And I'm just going to say, yeah, they're eating themselves alive, and it's entertaining to watch. But yeah, they're incapable of governing because that was never a thought in their heads. They're not responsible policymakers. They're just split between fanatics and more classical Republicans who will lick the boots and stay in line. So, still radical fanatics. With that, not much to add there other than look at this shit show. They are utterly irresponsible with the powers that they have been given. With that, support me on Patreon, follow for more daily videos, and with that, I wish you all a good evening.